We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. I'm not at home, as you can tell by the background. I am in Maine. I'm south of Portland, Maine, in a place called Old Orchard Beach. You kept seeing signs around here that said OOB, and I go, "What the fuck is OOB?" And then I realized it was Old Orchard Beach. As folks are listening to this podcast, it is October 14th. And this is my 40th wedding anniversary. So my wife and I took off to Maine. We're having a good time. And today, once this podcast is recorded, I'm going to go to bed. We're going to get up tomorrow and do whatever people do on their 40th anniversary. But I'm thankful that I have a guest on the show tonight. And it is Howard, and he's from Minnesota, like me. And he's had a colorful background, as we've talked about in the past. And not unlike me, Howard, you have some definite opinions on things, which is something I absolutely love. So welcome, Howard, to the show.
Thanks for having me. Happy anniversary, by the way.
Thank you very much. It's a tribute to my wife's tolerance. That's all it could possibly be. I mean, you see me on TikToks from time to time. You might hear me an hour on the podcast, but can you imagine listening to this shit for 24/7? That takes a strong woman.
Yes, or one that can tune you out.
Yeah, I got kids. I got kids that do that too. And we recently, just the other day, yesterday, we tried to do a little FaceTime with my granddaughter, and she was watching Baby Sharks at the time, which really had her the focus of her attention. So she comes over and goes, "Hi, Grandma. Hi, Grandpa." And she wants to finish this up quick. So she kisses the phone and goes back to the television set. So she's learned how to tune me out as well.
Yes. I love talking to my grandkids too.
Yeah, they're the fucking best.
The technology we have nowadays.
Just us doing this here. That's pretty amazing. There was a time when I was thinking, I'd love to do interviews, but how can I even work that out? It's simple. It wasn't tonight, but we got to figure it out. Well, Howard, there's a lot of shit going on. I mean, I'm out of town. I'm not as focused on the news as I normally am, but I've kind of kept up to date with what is happening. What are your thoughts on this Israeli Hamas thing? I mean, I know Hamas is a terrorist organization, but Israel's not without some culpability in this whole thing too.
I don't really have an opinion on that yet because I don't know if we hear all facts, and and Israel is, I get they're one of our allies, but the way we set that up, what was that, in 1948, there was a lot of controversy around that. And I think there's still a lot of hard feelings. And I think as Americans, we're not told every side of the story. And I'm not saying Hamas isn't terrorist, but, when they struck out at the Israelis, the part that I think about, they know they're going to get devastated because Israelis have the fourth largest military in the world. So why would they do that? How bad is their situation to want to strike out when they know they're going to get devastated in the long run? That's what I wonder about. What brings a person to that point?
Well, the thing about it is, I think we are all under a misunderstanding about what the scenario is. And like you, I'm not picking sides because I don't have a dog in the fight and I don't know much about the situation. And for me to speak on this is ridiculous. That said, there are some things we've heard. And what people have to understand, you have Israel. We know Israel, they're an ally of the United States, and we should be there to protect them. You have Hamas, which is noted as a terrorist organization. But then you have the Palestinian people that live in the Gaza Strip. Now, Hamas acts as if they represent Palestine, but they really don't. They really only represent themselves. So what you've got is this terrorist organization in Israel fighting because Hamas started it. And these, now I won't say all of them, but Palestinian people, kids, women, families in the middle, just kind of caught. They're kind of stuck in the middle. They don't necessarily support Hamas, but Hamas has gone in there and just taken charge. And it's, who knows what kind of violence goes on there. So it's a really weird situation in that conflict.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, we don't know exactly the whole story there, and that's, yeah, I don't know. We got to support our allies. I get that. I think, like the Palestinian people, and I don't necessarily get the Gaza Strip. I get that it's not a very big area, but anytime there's war, there's always innocent bystanders and
Right.
kids, all that get hurt. Just the same as in the Ukraine, how many innocent people have get killed in the whole mess of the deal.
Well, and that's the thing, in doing the Rational Boomer podcast, the TikToks and such, I've always said I don't join clubs. I've never joined clubs. And the fact of the matter is, I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. And in this case, I'm not as worried about the government of Israel or the group called Hamas. I am worried about the people. It's like what we talk about on the Rational Boomer podcast. I don't care if the Democrats or Republicans win. I'm tired of the people getting fucked. And whatever it takes to get the people what they deserve, that's what I'm for. And that's the same in this situation. There was a comment. Now, I saw it in the news, so I don't know if it's absolutely true, but if it's true, it troubles me. We know there are some innocent people, Palestinians, in this Gaza Strip. But the president of Israel, and I'm not sure who that is. I know Netanyahu is the prime minister. I'm not sure who the president is. But the president said there is no innocent people in the Gaza Strip, which means women and children and families and old people and all that shit. And I find that troubling. That's a troubling concept. I know they've said try to evacuate there, but you got 1 million people and you want them to evacuate in 12 hours. That's just not going to happen.
And a statement like that almost makes it lead to to like it's okay to go in there and just with no discrepancy and just flatten everything. If everybody in there is your enemy, then you have no. It's like a justification for a massacre, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, and that said, I understand where Israel's coming from. Israel was attacked. There were women and children killed on that side too. It was a surprise attack. This conflict has been going on for 70 years, something like that, since the late 40s. So this isn't a new conflict. The whole attack by Hamas is confusing because, like you said, there's no way they can compete with the Israelis. That's why you wonder if there isn't some other people involved in this. When this first happened, I said that don't be surprised if this is part and parcel to information that Donald Trump gave to the Russians, who gave it to Iran, who gave it to Hamas. Now, some people said to me, they said initially that's a conspiracy theory. But if you listen right now, everybody's talking about it like it's a foregone conclusion. Because we know Donald Trump did give Israeli military information to the Russians. I don't care whatever anybody says. It was in the news. He did it right after he became president. It's certainly worth looking into, but it's one of those things we have in this country and in the world, a fucking no-win situation. You wade into it one side or another, you're going to take a beating. If you go against Israel, they'll say you're anti-Semites. If you go against the Palestinians, they're going to say you promote killing children and women. So it's a no-win situation. And for old white guys like you and me, it's probably best to stay out of it. But I hear the stories and I'm just curious, how does this all shake out and why has this not been resolved before now?
Well, we're kind of like the world police, and I've never agreed with that issue either. And then you get over in them countries, and of course that fight's been going on since we created Israel. But they've been fighting since the beginning of time over there.
Right.
I don't know what kind of business we have in there trying to referee something that can't be refereed. Anytime you're fighting between, and that's what scares me about religion, it gives you justification to kill another, it's religions fighting against religions, and we can't change their theology or whatever,
Well, and that's a good point. And that's the next point I was going to make. And this is potentially going to piss off some people in the audience. And I've always done this. I say what I think, and based on what I see, facts, truth, whatever. There is nothing more in this world's history that caused the deaths of more people than religion. I'm not talking about a specific religion. I'm talking about conflicts between religions, which seems totally contrary to what God would want you to do. That's what I don't understand.
That's something I'm struggling with in my personal affairs right now. But you want to talk religion, and you're right. Most religions, on the outside, they promote peace, love, and getting along, and treating your fellow human being as a person. But I've never seen, religions that it's been from the beginning of religion that it's been causing wars too. How can something promote so much love and peace, and on the other hand cause so much bloodshed?
Right, right. It's weird how when people go to war, they'll say we have God on our side. So are you telling me that God, who's supposed to love everyone, picks a side that he loves more and says, "Go ahead and wipe out the other side"? I'm sorry, I fail to believe it. The thing is people say, "Well, you're atheist or whatever." I'm not. I believe in God completely. I pray every night. I do all this stuff. I believe in God. I just don't believe in clubs run by humans, because humans are fallible. They are corrupt. They can be criminal. And if they're putting a little bit of power and got some money in their hands, what they do isn't about God anymore. It's about themselves.
Exactly. And I think that's part of our big problem over here too, is that, and I hate to blame it on one party, but you you can't mix religion and politics. Now that's what I see happening in the United States, and
Absolutely.
and I think, and I'm only 60, so I can't say that I've been around forever, but this is the worst political situation I've ever seen. And I was just talking with my mother yesterday, and she's 93. And you talk about the early 60s, and I don't believe you're quite old enough to remember them, but I do remember bits and pieces. But she don't ever remember seeing a political atmosphere like we have it now, and
No,
it's, go ahead.
well, you're absolutely right. I mean, people, we've talked about this before. When people talk about the tough times we're having now, I always say that the 60s were just as tumultuous as what we're seeing today, with the exception of the government, because there was more cohesiveness in the government, even when they were fighting back and forth. I mean, let's not forget when it came down to getting Richard Nixon to resign, it was the Republicans that said, "A fucking enough, you got to go." But you don't get that now. We have this complete divisiveness, and we have people who want to institute religion into our politics, and these are mostly the MAGA fucks and the evangelicals, when the Constitution clearly says we should have a separation of church and state. And there was a very good reason our forefathers said that, because they saw what the Catholic Church did in fucking England. They didn't want that shit happening again. So they wanted that separation. And we do officially have that separation, but we have a group of people in the Trumplefucks that want to bring it back. And that's just one of many things that's troubling about the things they're doing.
The other thing that we talked about at the beginning of the podcast too was our technology, what we can do nowadays. And like
Right.
you're in Maine and I'm in Minnesota, and we got all this political turmoil. But the thing is, we can keep up with it from minute to minute to minute nowadays. How can they be blatantly so dishonest
Yeah.
about how they're handling their affairs? Because it can be tracked in real time nowadays.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. I'm walking along the beach in Maine, in Portland, Maine, and I get a notification saying that now Jim Jordan's the nominee for the Republican Party to be Speaker of the House. Well, the fucking ironic thing is he came in second to Steve Scalise. Steve Scalise couldn't get the numbers to get voted in, so he drops out. So they take the guy who's in second place that couldn't beat Steve Scalise, thinking that he might be able to be the Speaker of the House. Jim Jordan doesn't have a fucking prayer. The world is against him, with the exception of a few people, Trump-fucks, that support him. I think Jim's got some delusions of grandeur.
Bless you.
No, well, I was just coughing, so I don't know if you bless somebody for coughing, but
All right, you're sneezing. Well, the other thing that I don't get, as soon as they talked about electing him, there's a couple of them wrestlers that come out on TikTok and said, you do not want him as Speaker of the House. How can a man with that kind of a background even think that he could get voted into a position like that? And, he was getting investigated and then that got dropped. Why did that get dropped? You know, if he's that kind of person, that's not the kind of person we need representing us. And with our technology nowadays, how can they be so blatant about it? Or have them backgrounds and think that they can cover it up.
yeah. Yeah, well, Jim Jordan's not going to get elected. I don't care what a lot of people are wringing their hands and clutching their pearls, saying, "What if Jim Jordan gets it?" He's not getting in. If Steve Scalise couldn't get in, Jim Jordan has less of a fucking chance. He's got 60 people, from what I've heard, that are against him. That's a long way to go to get the right number. I mean, the number he got voted in the nominee was 120. Keep in mind, you need 217 to win. He ain't gonna win. And the problem with this whole thing is we're dicking around trying to find a Speaker of the House when we shouldn't even had to do this. And we got the Israeli Hamas war. We've got the Ukraine war. We've got a budget we've got to fix within less than 30 days. And the Republicans are dicking around, running around like chicken with their heads cut off. They're killing themselves in this situation. They're destroying the Republican Party just because of their lack of unity.
Well, and if you want to really look at that, killing the Republican Party, that's just one of many things they're doing to kill the Republican Party. You got Tommy Tuberville that won't give them military deals out, and then, yeah, they get rid of the Speaker of the House and there's things going on. First we got the budget, then Israel, that happens, and we're pretty much helpless at this time, because of that. How much more bullshit do they have to pull before they self-implode as a Republican Party?
Well, yeah, I think they almost already have. I mean, Jim Jordan isn't going to get elected. So now we got all these Republicans saying, I got dibs. I'll run. Even our own Tom Emmer, who's a piece of shit, wants to run for the Speaker of the House. And then there's another guy from, I don't know where he's from. He came in second to Jim Jordan. There's nobody they can elect. In all honesty, the only option they have is to work with the Democrats. And I think some moderate and conservative, normal Republicans would be willing to do that. It's just a matter if they quit bowing to MAGA. MAGA's got what, 30 people out of 218. It shouldn't be too hard to shut those fuckers down, but Republicans just can't do it.
I think if they don't shut him down, there isn't going to be a Republican Party anymore. And I want to tell you a little story here. I have a friend of mine, and he's a devout Republican. And the other day, he told me, he says, "I'm done. I'll never vote Republican again." He says, "I think I'll be Democrat, or I'll be independent." And that's cool. I like that he's not going to be a Republican, but still he's becoming an independent before he's becoming a Democrat, because he still has in his head Democrats are his enemy.
Right.
Well, the people that that in his head are the people that he's trying to get away from in his own Republican Party.
Right.
You know what I'm saying there?
Right.
We're still his enemy. The Democrats are still his enemy.
Yeah, that's the one thing I have a lot of trouble with. Even with Democrats, I will hear them make a quote about Donald Trump, and he could be running, he could be the nominee, he could win the presidency, or whatever is said about Donald Trump. And I always ask them, and they're always nervous about it and upset about it. Oh, what if that happens? I said, where did you hear that? And they don't know. But there's only one place they heard it, from Donald Trump or the Trumplafucks. So the next question is, Donald Trump is a pathological liar. Why in the world are you listening to his bullshit? We listened to it for the last 6 years. Look what it got us. Why don't you just shut that guy out and focus on the facts and truth and logic, instead of listening to this crazy motherfucker talk about shit that just isn't going to happen?
When I talk to people about Donald Trump, I always try to get them off at politics, because Donald Trump was crooked before he ever got to politics. So instead of arguing the politic part of it, why don't we just go back and see what kind of person he was before he got into politics?
Sure.
And his spots did not change once he got there. He was almost like a drunk once he got elected. All them bad qualities seemed to amplify in him, just like a drunk. The drunker he gets, the bad qualities just amplify in him. And when he got to be president, he went from being a crook to really being a crook.
Oh, yeah. His problem was he was a big fish in a small pond, and he could bully his way through and get away with it. But now he's a small fish in a big pond, and he doesn't have more money than the U.S. government. He doesn't have more tenacity than the U.S. government, and his old tricks just aren't working anymore. And when this is all said and done, he's sitting in his dirty diaper in prison. His biggest regret will be running for fucking president.
I don't know if he's that smart.
Well, there's something to be said for that too.
And the other part that I don't understand is he's been putting people in dangers ever since he's been under indictments, and even before that. How come no judge has shut him down? How come, we need a judge that's got a pair that's willing to do the gag order, or throw him in jail, or confiscate his phone, whatever they need to do. They need to do something.
They do need to do something, and nobody's really done enough to cause him to stop doing it. His own people have said he's not going to stop unless you make him. However, today is October 14th. On October 16th, Donald Trump's lawyers and the prosecution for Jack Smith are meeting with Judge Chutkan in Washington, D.C. And this is all about concerning his outburst and his talking and his ranting and raving and threatening and all that stuff. If there's ever going to be a time when a judge lays down the law, it's got to be the 16th when they get together. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. I mean, Judge Chutkan's a tough lawyer, a tough judge, and a good judge. But, because of who Donald Trump is and being a former president, everybody's walking on eggshells about doing things and making them accountable. But he's broken everything that judge and every other judge has suggested. So I'm hoping that on the 16th, when we have this meeting, she says, "Listen, motherfucker, I've warned you. if you do it one more time, all I have left is putting you in jail. And then if he does get put in jail, then it's on him, not on her.
I hope so. I hope she don't come up with some other options besides that, because and I've always heard she's such a good judge and a tough judge. Well, I have yet to see the tough part, because Donald Trump needs to be stopped. If that was any other person up on indictments, they would have been gone a long time ago. There was a friend of mine, this was very many years ago. We ended up in federal court down there in Minneapolis, but we were out garage sailing, and he was up on some drug charges. And we just happened to go in the neighborhood where that DEA agent was living, and he was having a garage sale. We pulled in. We did not know it was his house until after we pulled in. We got back in the truck, loaded back up. Within 24 hours, they had that guy apprehended, and then I went to court, federal court, this many years ago. He got put in jail. It was like an innocent thing that happened, but and Donald Trump just does shit over and over and over, and nothing ever gets done.
So Paul, Howard, let me see if I got this right. You're both up on federal charges. You and your friend, right? You're both up on federal charges.
He was. I went to court with him because it was an accident that we ended up in this neighborhood. We were garage sailing. They said it was intentional, but he got thrown in jail, and he got held until court because he was just in the neighborhood of that guy. And Donald Trump, he actually threatens people, and he don't get nothing.
Right. Well, what did they look at it? Did they look at, even though it was by happenstance that he was there, did they look at it as like a threat against the DEA agent?
Yeah.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay. That makes some sense.
Exactly. They don't look at anything happening by accident.
Because I was thinking, when you told the story, I was thinking to myself, okay, got a guy that's got a federal case working, and he happens to walk up to a garage sale that is at a home owned by the DEA agent. Well, what are the odds of that? I mean, it's something I've always accused the Republicans and Donald Trump of. Sounds, and you'll remember the reference, most young people won't, but almost sounds like the fucking apple dumpling gang, just walking into the mouth of the lion, as it were.
Yes. But and I don't care if he's a former president or not. When does the bullshit stop? When does a judge get, when do they exercise their power? Do one of them witnesses, or do one of them jurors, does somebody need to lose their life over one of Donald Trump's dummies?
Well, and that's a likelihood given all that's gone on. The only thing that I think is saving grace, is that he doesn't have the he was talking to his daughter there. You were talking to your daughter there.
Yeah,
he wasn't talking to me.
He'd like to say hi. I got
sure. Let him say hi. Let him say hi.
Trinity, come here.
This is who now?
My 9-year-old daughter. Her name's Trinity, and she loves it. I get on. Say hi real quick.
Hi.
Hey, Trinity, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. How's it dealing with this guy? Is it a problem?
It's
all right, mostly.
I love him, so it's fine.
Well, that's good. That's a good answer. That's a good. Get your allowance now, while you got him on camera and he's in a good mood. All
Thank you for letting him on your podcast.
Oh, I love having him on the podcast. That's not a problem. Thank you, Trinity.
Bye.
Bye. For those folks that aren't watching it on YouTube, the video part of this podcast, Trinity's a 9-year-old girl, Howard's daughter, beautiful young girl, nice and sweet and polite. And how the fuck is she related to you?
I wonder about that all the time. She even likes school.
Wow. Thank God for mom.
Yeah.
Thank God for mom. You know, it's I forgot where I was going with it, but it doesn't matter. Well, oh, I remember what I was going to say. The whole thing with the potential violence coming out of Donald Trump. The upside is I don't think he has the wherewithal um, to put together large groups of people to attack anything. I think they're all pretty much paranoid about that stuff. The things we have to worry about are the individual lunatics that just take take it upon themselves. I mean, we've heard some stories about one guy with a gun going toward a Barack Obama's house and somebody else going to Biden's house, and there's some individuals out there, and he could likely be responsible for inciting some of these people, even indirectly.
Um, I'd have to disagree with the indirect part there. I think anytime he calls for his people, that's what scares me too, is the individuals. I think he's directly responsible for them people. I think he needs to be held accountable. I get that they're probably off in left field someplace, but if he didn't call them, they wouldn't come.
Excuse me. When I say indirectly, I know he has a direct effect on these people.
Yeah.
I guess I'm looking at it in legal aspects. You go to court and they're going to look at it as an indirect way of inciting people. But you know, there's so much stuff that's going on in this country right now with the divisiveness and with the violence and such. And it all tracks back to Donald Trump. He's created this climate in this country where people hate other people. If you know, if I get a Trumplifuck coming up and talk to me, I'm not going to lose my temper. But if I start questioning some of the facts and offering some of my own, they typically get mad and they scream and they yell. It was never that case before. You know, I'm just thinking about talking to some friends of mine. They both happen to be liberals, but I say, you know, when we were back in high school, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, we never even talked about politics. Now everybody talks about politics. Everybody's got a side, and it's kind of like the religion thing. If you're not on my team, I hate your guts. I'm going to kick your ass. And therein lies the problem in this country.
Well, and I remember talking politics, but I never remember it drawing the decisive line that it does nowadays. You know, and I'm still kind of laid back. I don't care. You know, if you want to be Republican, that's your problem.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to probably always vote Democrat. But here's the, you know, the other thing is if the Republican Party self implodes because of all the stupidity that's going on now, then what happens to us? Because we're not set up for one political party government. Our government does not work without two political parties. So somehow we got to come out of this to where we still have two parties.
You know, it's interesting. I'm in Portland, Maine, actually in a suburb south of Portland, Maine. And my wife and I went on a little road trip. We were driving to some other towns, and we drove into this gorgeous town, Kennebunkport, Kennebunkport, Maine. Are you familiar with that town at all?
No, I've been in Maine, but it was like 30 years ago. And one thing that I do remember is I was going by Bangor, and I don't know if I'm saying that right. And I was actually reading a Stephen King novel at the time, and I
Wow.
will never forget that because I thought that was, oh, that's pretty cool. That's where this guy is from, you know.
Yeah, that's the freaky part about you being in Maine. Fortunately, it's not as scary as Stephen King makes it out to be. But Kennebunkport is the home of George H.W. Bush. That's where
Oh,
he and his wife lived. And you know, it's prominent around town. It's a beautiful town. And I didn't have as much trouble with George H.W. Bush because that was a time when things weren't so divisive. When his son came up, George W. Bush, I had after watching what he did, I said, this has to be the dumbest president we've ever had. Now he's not even a close second because Donald Trump makes him look like fucking Einstein.
Yeah, I never thought old George was very smart either. And people, I have my theory on how he got elected, but that's my own theory. But yeah, Donald Trump, there'll never be a president as bad or as stupid as him. And I don't see how he can have so many followers being so stupid.
Well, they're starting to dwindle now. And I will say this about George W. Bush. Well, I said this after Donald Trump became president. I said, I hated George W. Bush. But when Trump was in office for about a year or two, I said, I kind of miss George W. Bush. I wish we had him back because it would have been better than Donald Trump. One of the reasons I think George W. Bush was bad is because he had a vice president, Dick Cheney, who was one of his dad's cronies, who was Satan himself. And for all intents and purposes, while nobody would say it outwardly, he was kind of a co-president. I think a lot of the bullshit that went down was more on Cheney than George W. Bush. Bush should have been stronger in that situation, but that's how it played out.
That and yeah, after 9/11, how he got us over after Saddam Hussein, how we all fell for that, because the only reason we were there is because he threatened old man Bush, and they had nothing to do with 9/11. But that's where we ended up afterwards.
Well, and that's he did what every other Republican does. As they get out of office, the economy crashes. It goes to shit. The housing market went to shit. And of course, Barack Obama comes in, and over 8 years, he brings it back and improves it. But the Republicans will still say the Democrats are bad for the economy, which is categorically bullshit. All you have to do is look at the facts. Look at the last 5 Republicans and the last 5 Democrats, and the Democrats are always cleaning up after the Republicans.
Yeah, and that's another thing. When I look at them facts, how can you go through life being a Republican or a Democrat and never comparing, and then seeing, who does leave the best budgets behind? All that stuff is with our technology nowadays. It's all listed in nice little columns, and it can be read so easy. And it's just it's the truth as it's happening.
Well, what these Republican politicians understand is that no Republican has the wherewithal to actually dig down and find facts. They will just listen to whoever they like and believe anything they say. So that's why Republicans, some Democrats, just say whatever. And as long as they believe it, it doesn't matter if it's true.
Yeah. And then the other big thing the Republicans have is that they've always said, yeah, them liberals are coming for our guns. And, in the United States, we believe in our guns. And you know what? I believe in them too. But you show me somebody that's ever come for your guns.
Yeah.
And I support common sense gun laws. I don't believe we need these MR-14s or whatever they are,
Right. Well, I'll tell you this, during Barack Obama's tenure, the 8 years he was in office, there was never more guns sold in the history of this country. They tried to tell you that Barack Obama was coming for their guns, and they sold more guns than ever before. So explain that to me.
Well, and if you can look at your statistics again, there's a lot of gun laws are made by Republican presidents, and sometimes even more, but they don't report them facts.
No, they don't. They only let people know what they want to hear, and it's ridiculous. I tell you what, Howard, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, I want to talk about what's coming up over the next week to 2 weeks, because it's going to get fucking crazy. There's a lot of shit going on. Some of it we've already talked about, but things are coming together, and we're starting to um, see things come to fruition, and hopefully some accountability as well. So we'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Okay.
We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. It is Saturday, October 14th, and I have the good fortune of having Howard on the program. He is from Minnesota as well, from the more western rural part of Minnesota as opposed to where I'm from in the metro area. But Howard, I wanted to bring something up. You were talking about when are we going to see some action? I think everybody feels that way. And I'll just say this, over the next week and a half or so, things are really going to start popping. The first one we talked about, but I'm going to bring it up again on October 16th, which is 2 days away, Monday, I believe. The prosecution team for Jack Smith, the defense team for Donald Trump, they're going to get together with Judge Chutkan in Washington, D.C., and they're going to discuss this problem Donald Trump has of diarrhea of the mouth, which is ironic because he has the same problem on the other end, except he's able to fix that one with a diaper. So Judge Chutkan is going to have to figure out a way to fix his mouth. And the only way to do that is to hold him accountable. The question is, what is she going to do? What can she do? And that's worrisome. I think we're both hoping that somebody puts a hammer down and puts a stop to this stuff, because it's not only ridiculous, it's dangerous to this country.
Yeah, and the other thing that is very dangerous to this country, because that's what I'm talking about. That gets his insane ones going out there. The individuals,
Right.
and then he talks about things that he shouldn't even be talked about, like would you want to be on that jury knowing that are they gonna be able to see him, or is he gonna be able to see them? The other thing, if he's got to be in court on Monday up in Washington, how about that other civil trial that's going on? I thought he was gonna start showing back up to that because Michael Cohen's gonna be testifying.
Well, that's the next thing I was going to bring up. Yeah.
And then I thought he was asked not to be there anymore. What happened to that? Or didn't that ever really truly happen because he was there making faces to start with?
Well, first of all, in the court meeting with Judge Chutkan, I don't think Donald Trump has to be there. And I think that his lawyers would be wise not to have him there, because that could go really bad for him. But theoretically, both these, well, not one's in New York, one's in DC. I don't know that he'll be at the one with Chutkan. He's going to have to deal with his lawyers. But that's the next thing we were going to talk about, is that we've got the civil case, which I think may be one of the most devastating cases that ever happens to Donald Trump. When they take all his money, they take all his property, all his power, he's got nothing. Donald Trump doesn't exist anymore, because that's all he's ever been. It's all been a charade. It's all been a fraud, but people bought it, and that's who he was. When that's clearly taken away, he is just a shell. But you're right. We know that Michael Cohen will be testifying in the Letitia James lawsuit next week. And I too heard that he's going to show up at the trial. I don't know why. If he thinks he's going to intimidate Michael Cohen, I think he's fooling himself. But in terms of, now, when he was there for the first 2.5 days, I think we all got a misconception, because he left halfway through the third day. And then Letitia James said, the Donald Trump show's over. He's gone. He's not coming back. Now, the impression we would get there is she kicked him out the door, and she may have helped to push him out the door. But I think it was more of Donald Trump hearing things that he couldn't face up to, and he was in a position where he couldn't say anything. Plus, he's got the ADHD or whatever. He can't keep focused on anything. So he was starting to lose his shit. His hands were flailing. He was grunting. He was groaning. And I know his lawyers thought, oh, this isn't good. Get him the fuck out of here. And somehow they convinced him to go. But now he's coming back, or so they say. And that's going to be interesting because we'll see him at the breaks and after the session. We'll see if he does the same kind of shit. Now, keep in mind, he'll be doing that either on the day of or the day after Judge Chutkin is going to say whatever she's going to say on the 16th. So it could get a little sketchy here between these two things.
And I don't know about the Judge Chutkin. I would think if she's going to be reprimanding him for his behavior, I would think he would almost have to be required to be there.
Yeah, you would think so. You would think so.
Because you don't want Donald being able to misinterpret anything through a second-hand telling,
Well, that's a good point. That's a good point. She's going to want to put his hands on his fat little cheeks and go, look at me, Donald. Watch my lips move. You cannot do this. Don't tell me later that you didn't understand. You're going to understand. Yeah, you may be right. He may be forced to come to that.
Exactly. And I think it, because it involves his behavior, I think he is required to be there, but I'm not a lawyer.
Well, yeah. So maybe he goes there on Monday and then he goes to Letitia James on Tuesday. Now, of course, here's what we have to understand too, is Donald Trump said he's going to the Letitia James trial. Now, Letitia James, I don't know if she has any capability of holding him out. If she does, she'll try to do that. But at the same time, we know Donald Trump says a lot of shit that he never does.
Yeah. He never follows through with.
Yeah. It's hard to say whether he will show up at the Letitia James things, but there's been a lot of stuff come out of that trial that are pretty damning against him. He's going to lose that trial. Alan Weisselberg as much as said, yeah, I know what he was doing and I signed off on it. So this guy admitted to guilt. Of course, he's already been prosecuted, tried, and served his time. So I don't know that he has anything to lose at this point, but Donald Trump certainly does. And everybody who's testified are people under his wing, Republicans or employees or whatever. And he can't deny these people because they're his buddies.
Oh, I'd love to see him show up at court and try to, intimidate his former lawyer, because not only how does that make him look? I mean, you go in and you put a display like that on in a federal courtroom, it's not going to go well for you.
No. Well, and then there's one other court case that's kind of interesting that's coming up in 9 days. That is October 23rd. October 23rd is when the trial is supposed to start for Sidney Powell and Kenneth Chesebro for the Georgia case, which will be on TV. So that's going to be interesting to see what they do, because Fani Willis has said, we are going to talk about all the criminality and all the people. If I have to do the same case over and over again, I will do it. So this case will be about Sidney Powell and will be about Kenneth Chesebro, but it's a RICO case. So you got to tell the whole fucking story. And when you tell the whole story the first time, this is going to put Donald Trump and Mark Meadows and Giuliani all in kind of a bad situation.
Oh, I got True Social just for this. And it wasn't too long ago I heard that was going to run out of time or money or something, but it never did get shut down. But I can't wait until that court case starts in Georgia, because like you say, it's a RICO, so it's actually about everybody at the same time.
Right.
And they're only going to be trying 2 of them. I just wonder how big Donald Trump is going to blow up Truth Social, because all that evidence is going to be the same evidence they're going to use against him. So he's going to be trying to deny it, if, because that's Donald Trump.
Well, and see, here's the other problem too is, say if Sidney Powell says some shit and kind of rolls on Donald Trump, depending on what Judge Chutkan says on the 16th and what kind of things she lays out, if Sidney Powell or Kenneth Chesebro or Rudy Giuliani gets shit from Donald Trump's still in trouble with Chutkan, because they're no doubt going to be witnesses in the case for the January 6th thing. So he can't even go after people in the Georgia case, because they might be also tied into the Washington D.C. case. So he's got all kinds of chances to fuck himself over, depending on if Chutkan actually put some parameters up and makes them accountable.
The other thing, and people talk about this RICO down in Georgia, but what that I haven't heard talked about now, originally, why was the RICO laws brought around? It wasn't it to try the mafia?
Mostly, yeah. I think it was the mafia to start with, but they've used it in other circumstances too, in drugs and shit like that.
Okay, but you go from developing laws to prosecute the mafia to going to prosecuting our president. That just goes to show you how much of a criminal organization he brought into Washington to use them laws,
Excuse me. Did you hear about the trap that Jack Smith set for Donald Trump? This is
I laughed when I heard that, about where he was going to blame it on taking advice from his lawyers, and then
right.
Now, if he actually goes with that defense, then he has to take the witness stand.
Right.
Or maybe not have to, but he could be called to the witness stand. And then there was something else about it too.
Well, the other part of it is that if he claims his lawyers didn't do the job, or he was misinformed by his lawyers, that's one of his defenses that he's talking about. If that's a defense he's going to use, he has to acknowledge that before the trial. And that's what Jack Smith is making him do. And you're right. If he does claim that he was just acting on lawyers' bad decisions, if that's his excuse, which sounds like a Donald Trump excuse, he will have to testify. But more importantly than that, all the communications between him and Sidney Powell, Chesebro, Eastman, Giuliani, they can't claim executive privilege or client attorney privilege. All that shit has to be public. So every conversation, every communication he's had with all those lawyers becomes public, which can't be good for him. So he's going to have to bail on that defense. But if he bails on that defense, what does he have? He has no fucking defense.
I think Jack Smith has got him penned in so many ways from which way but loose. I mean, Donald Trump just plain doesn't have a good place to turn anymore.
No.
But how can, when you've been that much of a criminal, how can you not hem yourself in? There is no avenues of escape after a while.
Well, Howard, you were a criminal once, right?
Yes.
Okay. It's my contention that Donald Trump is not a very smart criminal, because he just spews shit. He's not very discreet. He doesn't know when to keep quiet. He says shit that implicates himself. He is a criminal, but he's probably the worst criminal I've ever fucking seen.
Well, I think part of that was because he's had so much money to get through his life,
Yeah.
He was always borderline bully criminal. And like you say, he's in such a bigger stage now. That's not working for him no more.
No, it's not. And the thing about it is that he can you would think his lawyers would tell him to shut up. Now, let me ask you this. Think way back when you were a criminal. Would you like to have Donald Trump as a partner in one of your crimes? That's
No,
almost sure jail time for you.
exactly. Exactly. He talks too much. Loose lips sink ships. That was
Well,
always my saying. And I've been pulled in on things, and I don't care if they got it right down to the T. You don't know nothing.
right.
Donald Trump, he likes to brag about how smart he is. That's and what he does.
Well, and it's funny I would think a guy who talks as much as he does puts his own personal safety at risk. Let me give you an example. He comes out and he says Israel and the leadership are dumb. They don't know what they're doing. It's ridiculous. And he talked against Israel, which is ironic because he's also told us he's done more for Israel than any other president. But here's the thing, because of his platform and the things he's saying, Israel's not America. Israel doesn't fuck around if they've got people going against them. And Donald Trump, in that case, was going against them. I got to think the Mossad is thinking, fuck, we got to shut this guy up. He's not helping us now. He's fucking up America, but now he's fucking with us. I got to think there are people out there, whether they be in Republican politics or in countries like Israel, knowing that Donald Trump maybe gave up their secrets. Well, knowing that, in fact, he did give up their secrets to Russia. These guys got to be a little nervous about this loud motherfucker, because even if he doesn't have the documents, he knows shit. And if he can't keep his mouth shut, he is a danger not only to this country, but every other country he has dirt on.
Well, when it comes to Israel and what happened in the last few days, and Donald Trump giving up Israel's secrets that first day or that second day in the White House,
right?
Not only would they maybe not assassinate him for something further continuous, but how about just for retaliating against what already happened? Because if this came from that day, from him in the White House, how many people has he caused to be killed?
And I want people to understand, I'm not hoping that anything bad happens to Donald Trump in that regard. I'm not. I'd rather see him go to jail and suffer for. Like I said, I hope he goes to jail and lives a long, healthy life, because that's the kind of punishment he deserves. But fuck, you got Saudi Arabia bringing a journalist over and cutting him up in pieces. You got Russia taking a political opponent and drugging the shit out of him and putting him in prison, or just meeting somebody in a fucking airport and blowing anthrax in their face. These people in other countries, it's not like America. They don't fuck around, especially if they think you're hurting them.
Exactly, and they have the people that will step up and do it too.
Yeah.
And they have the people that are good at that. What did happen back a few years ago? Wasn't that something to do with North Korea and his uncle? It happened in the airport, and boom, he was dead.
Yeah, it was somebody in North Korea, and somebody
Kim Jong's uncle, I thought it was.
Right, somebody just came by, blew some white powder in his face, and in hours he was dead.
I'd love to see Donald Trump suffer too, but in reality, he'd be less dangerous with a little white powder blowing in his face in the airport. How many lives is he going to be able to get by with putting at risk?
Well, people say he's kind of a cult leader, and they'll compare him to like Jim Jones, and they'll say, but Jim Jones killed 900 people. Well, Donald Trump is partially responsible for the deaths of almost 1 million people with COVID, because he chose to do nothing. I mean, he may be the greatest and most most vicious cult leader of all time, if you consider COVID and you know some of the other things like the Capitol attack, like Charlottesville, like any of these racial attacks that happen. This guy, I can't think of a guy that's more dangerous than he is in terms of cult leaders that we've had in this country.
And that's one thing most people don't bring up is the racial attacks. And of course, you know, this is a unique situation in my life because my wife is black, but the racism has manifested over the 4 years of his presidency that I'd ever seen it before.
Yeah.
It brought out in the open and it was made to be okay.
Yeah, well, that's it. You know, and your wife can probably speak to this better than I can. I'm making a judgment based on being an old white guy. People say racism is worse than it's ever been in this country now. I disagree with that. I think the racism was always there. It was just more covert. And then as soon as Donald Trump came out, he allowed these dumb fucks to come out from under the rocks and it raised like a fucking fever blister. And now they think they can say whatever they want. I mean, it's truly amazing some of the shit I hear from people. I mean, people I know, and I just look at them and go, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" And they can't understand. You know, they look at me as an old white guy and they go, "Yeah, you know what I mean. You know those people. You know what I mean." I go, "No, I don't know what the fuck you mean. Don't be a child. You're
And
dangerous."
and it ain't just racism against the black people, it's
No,
against the brown people, it's against anybody that's not white like we are. And I get so darn mad at people because they'll, and I go back again, we treat Mexico like shit, and I believe Mexico is a better neighbor than even our neighbor to the north.
right,
And nobody wants them here if you talk to the white people, but in the same sentence, if their roof starts leaking, who do they go looking for?
right,
Because they're hardworking family people,
right.
you know? So,
Well, exactly, exactly. It, I that's why I've said I think this country, the people in this country, almost everybody is prejudiced to a certain extent. And I don't
yeah.
mean about people of color. I'm just talking about people that are different. I mean, right now, if you go to a Catholic church, they'll tell you that they're going to heaven and that the other churches are going to hell. They look down their noses at other religions. If you've got rich people and a homeless person, there's prejudice there on both sides, really. But the one that's most powerful is the one that's rich. You've got a certain amount of prejudice between men and women. You've got there's prejudice everywhere you go. People are afraid of anybody that's different. You know, of course, the LGBTQ too. I'm convinced that the prejudice against LGBTQ is fear. It's fear of their. I mean, growing up, you know, there was when LGBTQ wasn't a thing, but you knew of people that were homosexual and you had all the names for them and stuff. If somebody of a different sexual orientation walked up to you in the 70s and touched your shoulders, there's some people that would freak out and start a fight. I know 'em. I know they've done it. And it's about fear. Everything about the Republicans is fear, and anything about racism is fear that they're going to get over on us or they're going to take something from us. And that's just not the fucking way it is.
Exactly. Fear goes a long ways, you know, and then we go politics, religions also teach a lot of fear.
Mm, yeah, exactly. Fear of God. That's in the fucking, that's it. I don't fear God.
No, and then the fear of the LGBT people, all that, you know, it's another justification,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, that's exactly right. What you're saying is true. It's a justification. You know, when I was in business, um, if you work with somebody and they cheated you in some way, it's always the same kind of person. And every time they cheat you and you confront them on it, what's the first thing they do? They rationalize it or justify it. I did something wrong, but I did it because of this. That's the reason I did. I'm not at fault. I did it for this. And that's the same thing with racism. It's all justification. You know, Donald Trump did it when he said all the brown people coming across the border are drug dealers, sex traffickers, and murderers. Well, that's fucking ridiculous. But he justified that and he scared the dumb people of this country and they just jump on fucking board.
Yeah. I want to relay a little story to you too, and it's about the brown people and the Mexican people. And here, and this was another Minnesotan, but we were talking politics, and then he says to me that he says, "You probably don't think we have a border problem either." And I says, "Oh, I says it all depends how you look at it." But I says, "Have you ever been to our borders?" And he says, "No, but they're just coming across." And I says, "You know what? You need to go to our borders like in December." And Mike, I don't know if you've ever been in our southern border in December, but there's miles and miles of Mexicans lined up.
Right.
But they're on our side trying to get back into Mexico for Christmas.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
do they show that on TV?
No.
No, they don't. And it's like I've always said, there people want to go home, especially for the holidays. And there's still a lot of them that do, but the reason a lot of people don't go home for Christmas is because they can't get back into work. And why are we fighting these people coming back into work? We need people in our country to work. I'm an employer. I've been short. I'm a 4-man employer, and I've been short 2 guys all summer.
Right. Right. Well, that's exactly it. And you would think when it comes to businesses being short of employees, you would think you would welcome good quality people coming across the border. I mean, we need them in terms of the migrant workers and such, and they're all left Florida. And we can see how that left Florida. They're a fucking mess because they can't pick any of the crops. They can't build any houses. They can't fucking do anything because there's nobody to do it. And it's all because of ego and somebody doubling down on a dumb idea and thinking it's going to get them votes. And it's not. It's going to cost them votes.
And well, I always argue too with people because they say, well, you're shorthanded because people are lazy. And I say, well, show me the unemployed people. You have a core, and I suppose this happens in every town. You have your percentage of people that are on welfare, and you're always going to have them. But after that, show me the unemployed ones. Where I live, there are no unemployed people.
Right, right. And that's the thing is that's what they always say. Oh, the people just don't want to work. I have heard people say that to me before. I said, well, as far as I know, lazy people have to eat too. Lazy
Yes.
people have to have a house too. That's ridiculous. You think people are living by choice in their car? Well, there might be some that have mental issues, and that's another issue that we need to take care of in this country. But I think for the most part, people want to work, and they don't want to work at a job that ends up costing them more than they make. I've had positions like that when I was young where I'd have to go someplace. And by the time I paid for gas and all the shit I had to do, I really wasn't making any money. So then I looked for a different job. But there's plenty of people that want to work, and there's far less that are too lazy to work. And that's just a weak ass excuse. It's a lame excuse.
Oh, and I love people saying that. And then that's the other thing that I bring up that you just talked about. You figure somebody in a gas station, let's say Casey's or Holiday or whatever, or a dollar store. What are they making? $12, $13, $14 an hour. Well, you can't afford to have a car. You can't afford to have an apartment. You can't afford to pay daycare on them kind of wages.
Oh, hell no.
Why should they even go to work when it costs money to go to work? And then they want to say, well, they can't afford to pay more than that. But them corporations are showing record profits every quarter. Why can't they afford to raise them wages?
Right. let me ask you, as a business owner, you have to pay your employees, right?
Yes.
How do you determine what you pay them? I mean, you have a bottom line. And if you paid them nothing, you could make more money, but would you get as much work done? I'm guessing not.
Well, and I charge by the hour. I'm kind of unique situation, but I I start my spraying people off at $26 an hour. I start my branch pickers uppers at 22. The way I judge this is when I send my men home at the end of the week, I want to know they've gotten a big enough check to pay their bills and maybe take their wife out for supper.
Right.
And people say, and I bitch about wages, and I bitch about wages to other employees, and I look them right in the eye. My wages affect my bottom line too, but hopefully by me paying my guys a little bit better, they take a little bit better care of my equipment. They take a little bit more pride in their work, which shows in the finished quality of the work. I do not believe you can go wrong by paying a man what he's worth. I believe when you're paying a man $12 or $14 an hour to raise his family on, you're not paying him what he's worth.
Right. Right. And that's when somebody's only looking at the bottom line. And the thing about it is this is what I have a problem with Republicans. They're very short-sighted. I used to have this when I was in business. I'd be a broker between a seller and a buyer. The seller wanted the most money he could get. The buyer wanted as little money as he could have to pay. And they could never come to meet of the minds because they always thought they were the ones in power. So in the middle, I had to explain it to them this, and the same could be said for employers, is look, if you get what you want on this deal, yes, you'll make a lot of money. You'll make more money than you probably deserve. But you will never deal with that other party again because they'll feel like they got fucked. The moment they feel like they get fucked, they walk away. And, in business with the shortage of employees, I got to think retention of employees is something that's pretty strong on your mind.
Oh yeah, my one guy, he's been with me, I think 9 years, and that's how long I've been in business. And I've had another guy, another guy that's been with me from the beginning. There's only one guy that's on my crew this summer. I've actually got three guys that work for me this summer, but one's part-time. He's new for me this year, but he's back after taking a couple year break. But I've started raising my wages in the last 3 or 4 years, so I'm trying to be a better employer, a higher payer employer of what we got in the county because I want to be able to pick who I can get to work
Right.
for me. Does that make sense?
Well, you need somebody good. I mean, if you want to be a business, you want to be able to do the best job you can, the most consistent job you can for your customers. And if you can't get employees that will help you to do that, then you're out of fucking business. I mean, that's the long-term problem with it. So now that you're paying somebody $26 an hour, and that's a reasonable amount of money where people can actually afford to live and drive and do whatever. And that's fair enough.
That's what I start them at. Yeah.
Okay. So you start them at that, unlike many of these places that want to start them at $12 an hour. Um, in doing that in a small business like yours, are you doing all right?
Oh yeah.
You're doing okay,
Yeah.
right?
And I believe in a lot of things that you believe in because and I tell my customers, we're probably not the cheapest business out there, but for one, we're fully insured. You get good quality of work. And that's one thing that precedes you to the job site is your reputation.
Yeah.
Your reputation gets there before you get there. And that's why we stay as busy as we do, even though we're probably not the cheapest, is because my men give good quality work because they take pride in what they do. and they go to work with a smile on their face because they know they're actually making money that day.
Right. I mean, if you bring people into work for you and they hate the work, they hate the job, and they hate you, you're not going to get a lot of production out of them.
No, no. And I'm not a very likable person all the time, so I have to have things that make up for it, and pay is one of them.
Well, and that's where you and I are similar. Like I say, people like me on TikTok and like me on podcasts, but how'd you like to be my wife dealing with this shit 24/7? You know, when she says something and I disagree, now we have a debate. Now, after being married 40 years, I'm learning some lessons there. You got to pick your battles. And as far as picking battles with my wife, that's never a good idea. Never. I lose no matter what happens. And so you just kind of nod your head and go, cool, cool. I mean, she wanted to come to Maine. She really wanted to come to Maine. And I didn't have any great desire to come to Maine. But fuck, she stayed married to me for 40 years. That's the least I can do. And now I get here and it's a wonderful place.
Yeah, I laugh when you make comments about your wife and how she has to put up with you, because don't get me wrong, Mike, my wife is a saint for putting up with me. And, she's stuck around. We've been together almost 20 years now. And I think about that all the time. She was born and raised in San Diego. I met her in Las Vegas. She knew absolutely nobody when I moved her up here. That had to be the scariest thing in the
Oh,
world.
yeah.
But you know what? She stuck it out with me, and I love her to death. I don't care what she asks of me. I try to do it because
Right.
she does. She puts up with me.
Well, you think about it, and I know Minnesota and I know rural Minnesota. Here's a woman that decides to marry you. I mean, we can question her judgment to a certain extent for that,
A
but
lot of people did.
but but you bring her to Minnesota. Now, Minnesota's cool, it's a liberal state. Until you get out into that rural fucking area and it gets to be like Alabama in some of those motherfucking spots. You bring this young woman of color into a small town in rural Minnesota. That took a pretty strong woman to make that choice and then turn it into a positive thing. Clearly she's probably a personable woman and she's made plenty of friends and it's all good now, but that is a scary situation to drag somebody into. I mean, it'd be like dragging you or I into um, an all black community and they look at you go, look at this white motherfucker. So she deserves a lot of credit, and whatever you have to do to cater to her, you should be doing it.
I sure do try, and I can relate that to that. You talk about her being in an all white community. The first time I ever went to church with her, I actually met her at her church, and I pulled up on my Harley. And I don't know if you've ever been in a black church, but they all dressed to the hilt.
Right.
And come in on my, I pull up on my Harley, I get off, and I drag up in all my leathers. And I was blocked at the front door. And they said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I was invited to church." So they kind of stepped apart and they let me go through. And they didn't know who I was going in there to see. Well, I went down and I seen Rashonda. I sat next to her and I was accepted. But I tell you, I felt very strange being the only white person in an all black church.
Well,
Now she's the only black person in the all white neighborhood. I get it. It's
yeah.
got, it's different. It's just different. It wasn't a bad situation, but it was different.
Well, if she can build a relationship with you, I'm guessing she could build a relationship and a friendship with virtually fucking anybody.
Yes. Yeah. She's
I
a
mean,
saint.
you walk up to an all black church, coming off a Harley, looking the way you do, you're their worst fucking nightmare.
Oh, I look very, how does she put it? I look very much like a skinhead.
Wow. And you're walking into an all black church. Wow. That's, that's commendable that she even did that because,
Well, and then, me being from the country, I'm so naive because, when I moved her out here, I said, well, there ain't no prejudice out here because, I grew up out here and I figured everybody was like me and I'm not prejudiced. But you know what? I'm probably one of the few because
Right.
I never seen it until after I brought her out here.
Oh, I'm sure there were people, and I always get a kick out of this when I talk to people like this. They'll go, did you see Howard got married? And then they always whisper, she's black. And I go, why are you fucking whispering? Okay, you're making a point that's the obvious, but but they always make this caveat because somebody's different, and they always point it out like it matters. I've told people many times that my wife and I go to Savannah, Georgia a lot. We have a little condo down there, and Savannah, the majority of the people in Savannah are black, 58%, 39% white. Now, I can tell you this, going down there, looking the way I do, you would think I wouldn't fit in. And maybe I don't fit in, but I have never met a nicer bunch of people everywhere I fucking go. And we're supposed to be in Minnesota nice. This ain't shit compared to Savannah, Georgia. I told my wife one time I'm walking into the grocery store and I see this young black man looking like a thug, the pants and all this shit. I'm walking up and I'm looking at him and I'm not thinking too much. I grew up in the inner city, so I don't really worry about people. But as I get close to the door, the guy looks at me. He he grabs the door and goes, "There you go, sir." And I'm going, "Fuck." If I'm an average white guy, I'm gonna walk up and go, "That guy's scary." But he wasn't scary. He was friendly and respectful just as anybody was. And and my point is that if people would open up to the idea that people are people and we can all get along, it's possible. You've experienced it. I've experienced it. I don't know why so many people are afraid of it.
Yeah, I think it's just fear of the unknown,
Yeah,
and we go back to fear in politics, fear of the unknown. You put things in your own head or whatever, and it's just the unknown is kind of like being in a bad relationship. People talk about abused women going back to their abusers because the unknown to them is worse.
right. Well, and for the younger folks listening, the older folks will understand what I'm saying. You grew up in the 60s and 70s. I grew up in the 60s and 70s. What some younger folks don't understand is in the 60s and 70s, racism was accepted.
Yes.
Saying the N-word wasn't a big deal. A lot of people said it. Nobody got canceled for it. It was all accepted. And it took some time, thanks to Martin Luther King and some of the other black activists, we saw some change for the majority of the people in this country. There's always the racists that were always there. But when you grow up in an era when racism is accepted, you get this ingrained in your head. And some people that are dumber than you and I, Howard, can't get that out of their head. They can't. They can't change the thought process. And all you have to do is look at logic and the facts and the truth, and you realize it doesn't make any sense. But not everybody's able to make that transition.
I never quite understood, why white people always thought they were so superior. I love going to other countries and learning from the people around me.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's the one racist feeling I have is I hate old white men. They're fucking loud, they stink, and they're slow. And because I'm an old white man, I can say that all fucking day, and I'll say it with pride.
Yes, yes.
Not all old white men are created equal. There's some of us that are normal, but I'm looking at going to my 45th class reunion. And I've always gone to my class reunions, but this one I'm thinking twice about. Because I know where I grew up in South Minneapolis, it was a very blue collar place, and I've run into some of my old classmates here and there, and there were a lot of fucking Trump humping racists in my high school. You wouldn't have known it back then because Trump didn't really exist in that realm. but I know they are because I see them on Facebook and I see all this stuff. And I'm thinking, why do I want to go there? Why do I want to see these people? I have disdain for anybody that continues to follow Donald Trump now. And while I wouldn't go there, want to talk politics, and generally I don't talk politics. I do it here and sometimes with my wife because we agree. But if I walk into a place with a bunch of Trump humpers, I'm not going to talk about politics. Let's talk about getting drunk when we were 17 years old. That's what this is about. But inevitably with Trump humpers, especially if they know how you feel about it. And I don't know if you noticed, Howard, I've been kind of open about my feelings, and I've been kind of higher profile than most folks about it. But inevitably, they'll want to come up to you and get in your face and try to challenge you, you know? And if that happens, I can't not talk. And then it's going to get ugly and they're going to get embarrassed and they're going to get mad. And I just don't know if I want to put myself in that situation.
Well, they come across just like Donald Trump does, like a bully.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And when they're put in their spot, then they don't know what to do except for fear and anger, you know.
Well, when somebody comes across as a bully and they come up to somebody like you or me, it's not going to go well for them. And for whatever reason, they don't understand that. And when bullies get knocked back down, they tend to get dangerous, you know? They tend to get angry because it's all emotions with them. And then it turns into something totally different. And, when it comes to problems like that, I think we're all better advised just to stay away from it.
And then I think even like the diversity in our state, like you're from the cities, you got some diversity
Yeah.
down there. I come from rural Minnesota, and don't get me wrong, I think we're just as intelligent as any city folk, but you get people out here that's maybe not even left our county,
Right.
but they have the answer to the world politics.
Right.
And it's kind of like Donald Trump putting his whole family into politics. Where did their training come from? Where are they coming up with these answers? They've never even, I'm going to give it away. There's people I know that have been barely out of Big Stone County, but they have the world answers. How can they think they got that?
Well, and that's the thing I was saying before. These people have this information and they have to consider the source. The only way they would have gotten this information is from Trump himself or watching Fox News or OAN. So as far as they know, that's true because they believe anything. They look at it and they say, yeah, I like that. So I'll act like that's true. And that's what they do. Then they take it and own it, and then they start spewing it everywhere. And in most cases, people will just shy away from it. They don't want to argue it. Unfortunately, much to my wife's chagrin, if somebody comes up and say, Trump 2024, sorry, man, it's on. I'm going to test you to see how fucking smart you are.
Yeah, that's the way I am too. My wife, she just likes to crawl away about that time.
I know. I remember I was standing there with my son talking to a family member who's a big Trump humper, and they said something stupid. And all I heard my son say behind me was, oh shit. Because he knows I'm going to respond. And I don't yell and scream. I don't get angry. I don't have a bad temper, but I'm going to spew some facts and you better have a fucking answer. And if you don't, I'm going to embarrass you. And you deserve to be embarrassed if you're spewing lies and bullshit.
Exactly. And they're so easy to get over on because they don't have facts.
No. And they always want to divert.
Hunter Biden. Let's bring up Hunter Biden.
Yeah, let's bring up Hunter Biden. They just dropped his fucking charges for his gun charges. Did you hear that?
Yeah. But no, you saying they divert. That's the main thing they want to divert to is Hunter Biden. I don't ever remember voting for Hunter Biden.
No. And that's the thing is they, even if they know they're wrong, they will say anything to prove they're right, even though they know they're wrong. And that's where the problem lies. We're dealing with children here. We're dealing, it's like my granddaughter. I'll sit there and talk to her, and we were making cookies one time or something, and she would just keep eating the dough before we made the cookies. I said, honey, you can't eat the dough. We got to make the cookies. Your dad's going to want the cookies. Don't eat the dough. And she goes, okay, I won't. And her and her dad do this all the time. So I did it too. I said, pinky swear. So she goes, pinky swear. You won't do it, right? Turn around to go to the sink. Got a handful of dough in her fucking face. She, I said, honey, your promise ain't worth shit. I don't know. Well, Howard, we're getting to the end here, and I want to thank you for. Actually, I wasn't planning to have a guest today, and I'm sitting here in Maine, and I'm trying to figure out how I'm gonna put this together. And doing it alone is always hard. So, you're a lifesaver today for popping in and helping me out with the podcast. I appreciate it immensely.
I always love being on your show, Mike. And I'm glad you let my daughter say hi, because she's always talking shit. You're always listening to the Rational Boomer. You know, I got my headphones on. I'm in the house. I do a lot of TikToks too, but I listen to you every day, and she knows I do, and she just wanted to be part of it because that's how kids are, you know.
Well, absolutely. I mean, if I could, I told my wife yesterday, I said, honey, it's our 40th anniversary. I'm going to mention on a TikTok. Do you want to come on and let them see your face? And she says, no, I don't want to do that. I said, I guarantee you that motherfucker will go viral. You want to do it? She don't want to do it. And, you know, I can't, I certainly can't, I wouldn't do anything with my granddaughter. I don't want her exposed to the dipshits out here. There's just no fucking way. My wife will always say, doesn't it bother you when people say bad things about you? I go, no, actually, I kind of enjoy it. You know, when they say bad things about me, I know I got in their head. So, and I tell people, I always tell people that I would rather piss you off than have no impact on you at all. And that's true. You know, fortunately, most of the people here, all the people here on the podcast and in TikTok for the most part, are all of a like mind.
Yes.
But occasionally I'll come across some foes, and I just pretty much ignore them. That's one thing that TikTok creators do that's wrong. I think somebody will make a shitty statement, and then they'll take the statement and they'll respond to it. Well, of course, this motherfucker's going to try to take you down. Don't do that. Just take the platform away from them. They're trying to come to your platform so they can get people to actually listen to them. And I don't do that. It's just not worth it. But if they say negative things about me, I don't fucking care. I love it, actually.
I do too, because I always say if they're talking about me, then they're not talking about somebody else. But the other thing, if you piss them off, you're in their head.
Yeah.
And if they think about it enough, maybe they'll get a change of mind. I know that's a long reach there, but
yeah,
they can't if they don't think about it.
I haven't met a Trump. I mean, when you think about all the shit that's happened and all the things that have come out on Donald Trump and all the evidence that's come out and all the stupid shit he's done and said, and they still support him, I got to tell you, Howard, those are some hopeless motherfuckers.
Or they got to be the stupidest people that we have, I would think.
Yeah, it's pretty pitiful. Well, Howard, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. I'm going to be back for Monday's show. I'll be back Sunday, actually, tomorrow. I'm going in the afternoon, but I appreciate you coming out and helping out. It made everything a lot easier for me tonight. So much appreciated.
Thanks for having me.
All right. For those of you that listen, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to listen. I hope you have a great day. And of course, we will talk to you again tomorrow.